Alrighty, so this is going to be my very first crit, Cat 5 as it comes, barely raced, barely done anything like that, been biking for about 6 months now. My name is Chris Sheldon, I'm from Northwest Arkansas, racing under the Fayetteville Wheelman / BMC Walmart Cycling. This crit, as I said, is put on by the Gamblers Crit Series. This one is in Downtown Bixby, standard 4-corner crit. Probably the worst possible setup for my first crit, as it's going to be a highly technical, a lot of surging, and today the special was that it's extremely windy. We're talking 20-mile-an-hour standard, and then gusting up to the 30s and 40s. You won't be able to tell with the GoPro smoothing about how bad it is, but there are a couple of times where the bike near about fell over just because of the wind. But like I said, super exciting. This was my first race. Extremely sloppy. We're gonna watch some pretty terrible race tactics, some pretty terrible racing here, but we're doing that so that we can improve. So let's go ahead and get started. Alrighty, so basic thing, me and my teammates, I've got 3 here. You'll see one, you got Ryan, who I just passed, on my left, and I've got Nate on my back. We knew we wanted to take it somewhat slow to start, and we just wanted to kind of feel out the course. So we knew that I was going to take the front for just a little bit and just kind of vibe around, see what we'd do, and see if we could motivate some of our other friends in the pack, just to see who was going to be leading attacks. So goal here really was to take it smooth and as easy as possible, as quickly as possible. Immediately taking an absolutely horrendous line right here. The wind right now is coming left to right, and so really if you're going to be trying to race this appropriately, you should be guttering your opponents by sitting on the right side of this road so that no one can draft effectively from you. But honestly, I hadn't really thought of that at this point in the race, so haven't seen that come in yet. But kind of as we're moving around, trying to hold a consistent around 200 watts, something that I can easily do for ages and ages and ages, but nothing that's gonna really like striate the field or anything like that. At the time of this race, my FTP is probably around 279, 280. I had just gotten COVID about 2.5 weeks before this, and so it took a pretty serious hit to my fitness. It hit me pretty hard. I was off the bike for nearly 10 days. So coming back, this was a big slap in the face. You'll see here that a lot of the time these corners require a lot of acceleration. I don't think they did. After rewatching this footage, it's pretty clear that you probably could have pedaled through every single one of these corners and turned these 400 watt surges into a consistent 100 or 200 watts through the corner, and would have felt a lot better. Given that though, these first couple laps are a little boring, so we're going to jump ahead to when it gets a little more exciting. Alright, so now we just entered into lap 4. This is where the action actually starts, and you can see the very first attack. This is from a cycling team called Brick Squad. Never found out where they're from, but they've actually got 2 guys, a little sneaky. They've got one in a red jersey and one in a white jersey, and so we actually didn't know they were teammates to start this race, but they actually did some really good team tactics. And you can immediately see that I am losing the wheel on the corner, take a really terrible line again. And even though I'm surging up to 600, 700, 800 watts twice, this headwind is so bad that I'm now, of course, allowing guys to come around me. I try to hop on his wheel, can't do it. And I take this so slowly, I motivate actually my teammate this time to come around me to close this gap. And there goes Nate, that's my other teammate that I was talking about, does the hero move here and closes down this gap as we're coming in. Now we're going way faster than we were, and like I said, I was not really prepared in terms of my cornering skills, and so basically for the first half of this race, but every corner I was taking, I was losing half a wheel to 2 wheels, and you see that pay off in spades, kind of punishing me constantly, having to surge up to, this time, 500 watts all the way up there, trying to understand, or just trying to catch back on. And you can see this is the formation of the breakaway, not by any real breakaway effort, but by me holding wheels really poorly. So that's the clear cause of that. Here we go. I'm seeing the gap opening up between Nate and I. I'm still feeling good at this point. I know my heart rate says 192, but with COVID, my heart rate's been way higher. So normally, being above 185 would mean that I was in extreme danger and something bad was going to happen to me. Post-COVID, I can easily sit in kind of the 180, 190 range, and it's not, there's no danger there. But doesn't mean it doesn't hurt. We're definitely hurting at this point. We probably averaged a normalized power for this first 6.5 minutes of over 300 watts. It's been really hard, surging every corner here. Now you can see this guy in front of me. I'm sitting in no man's land. Anyone who's actually raced would be screaming at me to close down this 10-foot gap and draft this guy. But I am just being a little lazy and not closing down that extra 10 feet. But you see, as we come around this corner, I work to actually close the gap down. But you can see, once again, every single turn it's 350 watts. And you can see as this guy's turning, he easily could have pedaled through that corner. Obviously, I'm not either. You can see my cadence going all the way down to 0. But as we continue through, you can kind of see that a lot of this is going to be, this is how it's going to be for a bit. This guy who's kind of sitting in no man's land, not really making an effort to bridge, is going to pretty quickly give up, and he's going to say, I'm done with this, which is fine, because obviously I wasn't getting advantage from him chasing either. You can see we're tumbling out wide, trying to take this turn appropriately. This turn felt always a little sketchy, because as you would come around this corner, you would immediately get smacked in the face by the wind, and it would just really, really, really hurt every single time. You would easily get slowed down like 4 or 5 miles an hour. Once again, taking another poor line here. I think I correct it pretty quickly, though. I'm sitting in this guy's draft. And you can see at this point, they've shelled one rider out the back of that 7-man breakaway. It's now a 6-man breakaway up there. That blue jersey you see there is a Tulsa Wheelman jersey. So heading in the right direction to catching them, but still, like, as you can see, like, the field has not gained any time on us. They're still about 10-12 seconds ahead of us, despite the fact that we're doing these serious efforts. Now, what you don't see in this race is that actually at this point, probably 1 or 2 laps ahead of this point, you're going to see that the breakaway is going to launch, and 2 guys are going to go for the preem, and that's going to create the winning podium set of just those 2 guys. But you can see at this point, maybe they're at 13-14 seconds ahead of us, still in eyesight, but you can see that no one has been motivated to assist me in bringing these guys back, and so I'm going to quickly realize that I probably spent far too long out in the wind and need to find somebody to help me. So we're gonna wait, and we're gonna jump back to when I found that guy. Alrighty, so we spend about 4 or 5 minutes yelling at a bunch of people, trying to convince them to chase this back. But being a Cab 5 race, a lot of our other fellow racers did not have the fitness to actually bring this back. And so I find this guy in the Jane's jersey here in the black and gray, which is honestly super dope. It's a really cool jersey. But he and I agree that we're gonna chase this back. And so we began working, and so even though I was drafting for about 4 or 5 minutes, I finally recovered. You can see my heart rate's started to fall just a little bit, and finally have a chance to really go chase these guys down. And so we're going to work together to bring this back and finally punch a hole in what has been a really, really sloppy breakaway that I kind of created myself by racing so poorly. You can see we're getting better at it at this point. You're not seeing the cadence drop down, pedaling through the corners, keeping it, obviously still losing a bit of power, but being consistent through the corners, which is the important part. Here we continue. He kind of wiggles me through, but he immediately accelerates, and so I just sit on him here. Was a little confused if he wanted me to come through. He should have sheltered me there. Those orange pieces of tape that you see in the road are actually marking like divots in the road. Basically, if you were to put your bike tire in that section, you are 100% going down, unless you were like, if your bike was straight up like that. And so finally do get to come around him. And as you can see, we're trying to really make these clean, consistent turns coming into this. And we're still, can't see around this corner, but the next corner is what really tells you whether we're actually gaining ground or not on the peloton. And so you can see at this point, this lovely lady who's right at the end of this dumpster was consistently giving us the time difference between the break and us, the peloton, which was super, super, super helpful. Would not have been motivated to chase this back if she wasn't constantly telling us. There you see her yelling 9 seconds, 9 seconds. Here comes our Jane's rider. And you can see we're working together really nicely, making it really easy for us to make the distance. And what I found out from my teammate Ryan, who is in this break, was that actually in that 2-man break that went ahead of the break, they actually had a rider, had a teammate. And so in the 5-man break that is currently sitting, that we're chasing back, one of their riders is completely sitting in and not helping at all, which is of course super annoying, but exactly the right decision to make. And so we get kind of the breakaway gets punished by that, because they're missing almost about a quarter of their work that they would be doing. And so that allows me and this Jane's rider to make a pretty consistent chase effort. This takes about 4 or 5 laps, and so we're going to jump ahead to when I actually catch them. Alrighty, so at this point, we are now within striking distance of catching the breakaway. And you can see the composition of it here. We've got a couple of lapped riders who are now mixing into the field. They're making this a little sketchy. That's the one lapped rider on the right, coming right in as the turn goes. But you can see now we're within maybe 20 feet of the breakaway, which is now 4 riders. Like I said, 2 up the road, and there are now 4 here. So currently I'm in 7th place. This guy just absolutely gives up at this corner. I have no idea if he was just completely pinned, had nothing left. Come around him, he's looking for somebody to pull him. We're only a couple laps from the finish at this point, and just absolutely gaps himself for what appears to be no reason. Just totally let the wheel go. He has no teammates up the road. There's nothing like that. I think he just got tired. So me and the James Rider continue our last little push to close this down, which we were pretty successful in. Like I said, we get really damn close to closing this guy down. Almost there, and you can see it right at this point into turn 1. We've almost made contact. And like I said, you see that red jersey. That is our Brick Squad friend who has a teammate in the break, or now officially in the break again. And so he's the guy who's been sitting on this entire time. He's completely rested, according to Ryan. Very strong, very punchy rider who's done basically no work this entire race. So very smart race by him. You can see that we're, hopping on just to stay on the bike here. And then we got this guy, he's checking back. At this point, we had 1 or 2 other riders on my wheel, I think 1 other, but this was going to be the group that was going to sprint for the finish. At this point, you can see we're pedaling through turns, keeping it consistent. We're taking him 23, 24 miles an hour instead of 21, 22. So we've gotten better over the course of time. You can see our Brick Squad friend, he's checking back. He comes around, and he's intentionally doing this so that he can move back in the group and skip his turn at the pull. But you can see he's anxiously awaiting the actual sprint finish. So we take this group pretty consistently up until the very end. And so right about here, Ryan and I are communicating that this guy is skipping turns, and so we're trying to drop him off the wheel. We need to get rid of him. He's too fresh for the sprint, so we've got to make a move. So I power up along the side here. Once again, another dropped rider is kind of making this turn a little sketchy. You see him pull off. That's awesome. But now Ryan and I are in control of this race, trying to, in the last lap, at least make this a little hard for our friend in Brick Squad, as it's just going to be, he's going to win this sprint if we don't do anything. But at this point, honestly, as you probably tell, I've been doing a lot of 300, 400 watt efforts, and I'm feeling pretty pinned at this point. My legs do not feel particularly great. And admittedly as well, I was talking to both Ryan and Nate after this. I didn't hear the bell lap. I did not realize what that meant. I can tell you right now, I know what a bell lap means, but I did not realize that we were heading into the final effort. And so you can see here as we kind of go, we got another lapped rider ahead of us. But we're now beginning to control the race. Ryan and I are chatting. I'm trying to figure out exactly how we want to end this sprint. This is the final lap. And so as we come in here, our Brick Squad friend takes a really nice inside line and gets just right ahead of Ryan. I missed it, wasn't looking for it. And you can see right at this point, I take a really poor turn. At this point, I'm just incredibly gapped. Super lazy by me, wasn't paying attention, wasn't ready for it. I kick it up to 400 or 500 watts. There's a James rider right on my wheel. I realize it and start sprinting for it. And you can see my sprint's just absolutely terrible, but managed to clear the line at 29 miles an hour. So pretty pitiful sprint. Really nothing powerful there. And so now that we're going into bell lap, you can see we're now, the Brick Squad guy is now sitting in the wind by himself. But like I said, this is last lap. That bell lap had me confused, and so I'm looking around seeing what's going on. Ryan's checking back for me, so I finally get on his wheel. But Ryan's waiting for me, being a good guy. He loses his wheel in front of him, unfortunately. So now we are currently sprinting for 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th right now. That's the order you see on your screen. As you can see, my heart rate is kicking up to 187, 188, 189. So that big 700 watt effort that I kind of did prior, it just really did not help. Ryan takes a great inside line here, whips it around nice. But at this point, we are already, 10, 20 feet off the Brick Squad rider, and he gets to take an ideal line. And even though we take this corner pretty well, we're now sprinting for what should have been a pretty poor place at this point. But you can see our rider up ahead launches it kind of early. And so he managed to take, there's third, there's our Brick Squad taking fourth. But I believe that was a lapped rider, and so really that order is 3, 4, 5 right there. Like I said, that sprint was pretty embarrassing. I near about crashed because of the wind that hit me there. But that was my first Cat 5 race, Downtown Bixby. Thanks to Gamblers Crit and the Oklahoma Sports Production Company putting this on. It was a really awesome race. Really loved it. Thank you guys.